Welcome to our interview series featuring Gordon Kennedy.
PJ recently had the opportunity to travel to Nashville and sit down with Gordon in his home studio.
We hope you enjoy this episode. We're going to jump to the burst because Change the World literally changed your world. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. And so it's right there. How about you just show it? Because I've teased it enough. The top on that is ridiculous. We're getting a lot of natural light through these windows.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping it does
can,
it some level of justice.
Yeah, there is flame on this. But you can go stand and find a place where it sort of disappears, you know? Obviously, this was a cherry sunburst when it was new. Gibson would learn at some point that aniline dye they would use would fade.
The tomato would fade in the window.
It would fade, yeah. But when I've got pictures of John Sebastian using this guitar, but this was on all the Love and Spoonful records, John Sebastian's guitar. And
is it a spoonful burst? Is that what it's affectionately called?
That's what Gibson called it when they did the replicas in the custom shop they did in their Collector's Choice series. Right. This is number 13 in the series we did. And I believe they called it the Gordon Kennedy spoonful with quote, spoonful burst.
Right.
Replica of the 1959 Les Paul Standard that John used on all of those records. So Nashville Cats, Do You Believe in Magic, Summer in the City, or Boom, What a Day for a Daydream is this guitar. And
there's a lot of songs left in it as well.
Yeah. It was just one of those things. And I bought it in the year 2000.
So this was not part of the great 1999 Nebraska guitar safari. This was right after that, because I think you had your eye on another one that fell through for various reasons.
There was a guy that had a shop in Toledo, and I saw the guitar. I had never seen or touched a 59 Les Paul when I went to a vintage show in Nashville, and I took my dad for the first time. I got to walk around a room in a vintage guitar show with my dad going, I had one of those. Yeah. I had one of those. Well, where is it now? I don't know.
Because to your dad, those were tools.
They were tools, but he also said the phrase to me. He goes, I said, well, what happened to it? He goes, back then things just had a way of kind of walking off. And, I'm like, okay. I imagine he did have a burst.
I think
He didn't know. It was either a 58 or 59. And because when he said I had a Les Paul in the 50s, I said, was it gold or was it like a sunburst? He said, I don't remember. But Margie Singleton, Shelby Singleton's wife, would send a picture of him playing behind her on the stage at the Hayride, and he got a dang burst back there. So he had one of these.
Thanks, Dad.
And he bought it because the form-fit case that hugs this guitar shape fit the trunk better with the trunk being full of other stuff.
Again, they were tools. I think maybe you were the one that said it. It would be like, it's a carpenter's tool. And it'd be like asking a carpenter, what hammer did you use when you built that house? Right. The one that was there.
Yeah. So I think I just knocked this guitar on the mic.
Make sure we're all still together.
Yeah. If something exploded right there.
Sorry, Jason.
It tends to do that with those speakers back there too. But but then he would get rid of the guitar at the point where he was doing like 3-hour shows and standing on stage with this wrapped around his shoulder, So the weight of it caused him to trade it to Billy Sanford for a Stratocaster. Oh, so you had probably a late 50s Stratocaster. What happened to that guitar? I don't know. Things are just... So the same story with that. He doesn't know.
When I leave and there's no more burst here, I'm just going to tell Gordon, things just have a way of just walking off.
Yeah, they do.
So that is an amazing piece of history. And Gordon was kind enough last time I was here. I got to strum a few chords on that. It was both exhilarating and intimidating. So that is a very, very special guitar.
Yes, it is.
This is the birth year. Way back, however many minutes this has been going, the birth of your guitar. So right behind that one is a replica. That's a prototype of your dad's 61 335 Pretty Woman guitar.
That's right. So Dad went to Hughley's Music in Nashville and bought a 61 ES 335, which right now resides on loan at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum down in Nashville.
Or it would be here, but this is the next best thing.
So they made one prototype for him that was kind of a wine red. It was a little too dark. And when I pointed that out to him, then they made this one right behind it. So he ended up getting prototype number 2. You can see on the back of the headstock, they just take a Sharpie and write on the back there. So same thing with my prototype of the Sebastian replica. just a Sharpie, you know. But then all the production models have a stamp or
Yeah, I've seen Brody's. Brody
Yeah.
has one of each.
But so what they did was, I thought the thing that would be the hardest for them to do to be to replicate these levers here. A guy named Dean Porter in the early 60s went to my dad and then another session great guitar player, guy named Grady Martin, who's also in that A team of players. He had a Gibson, and this guy said, I can take your Bigsby's off and replace them and give you pedals that will emulate steel guitar licks. So Dean Porter evidently went to the plumbing aisle in the hardware store, because this lever back here, you put your elbow on, you can go, it drops a whole step, right? And the B bender comes up, which I love this B bender better than anything I've ever used, because in the studio I've been able to sit and not have to stand up with a strap
Right.
and do the thing. So
Call your chiropractor. So that made it a more versatile tool, because he could go in and do steel parts.
yeah, and you hear Grady Martin use his B bender. He does that lick in the middle of his solo on Devil in Disguise, Elvis. But what I was going to say will make you laugh is this right here.
Looks familiar.
Well, if you live in the civilized world, you know what that is. It's the drain stop in a sink or the bathtub. So and then this bolt is what fixes the toilet to the floor in the bathroom. So that's, you know, what aisle he was in the hardware store when he came up with all this. So if you were using the B bender, for example, that bolt sets the distance this lever travels. If that was coming up flat, you just screw this further into the body so it travels further, and sharp, it comes the other way. So that's, and this was the replica of the guitar that played. That's like I said, on loan at the Musicians Hall of Fame downtown right now. But Gibson did a wonderful job.
Yes.
Of replicating the guitar. They ended up doing 2 prototypes to get this one for my dad, the correct color, and then they did artist number 1, 2, and 3 for me and my 2 brothers, and then they did a production run of only 50 guitars, and so very limited run of these guitars.
So Peter Frampton has one of these.
He's got one, and Ricky Skaggs, we bought one for Garth. We got him number 7 because that's his favorite number, and he loves my dad. Was always just a champion, championing my dad. He also believes that he should be in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Well, for somebody who might be able to wield a little bit of influence.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that should be that little pinch and not the twist, right? That we talked about earlier. It should just be a little pinch on somebody. Let's stay with birth year. I think going back one more, right?
Just real quickly, when I went to a block party for NARIS, which is the academy that gives the Grammys, National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. And I was on the board of trustees. They thought, hey, we should have him on the board. And I wasn't even a member. I'm embarrassed to say when we won that year. But so I found myself on the board of trustees, not trustees, governors, board of governors for NARIS. And we had a block party, and this guy named Jim Casey approaches me because he has his office 2 doors down from NARIS. And your dad is the reason why me and all my buddies back in Norfolk, Nebraska, wanted to learn guitar. And he brought me a copy of Tom and Jerry, which is an instrumental album my dad did with Tommy Tomlinson in 61, I think it was, or 1960. And yeah, it was 1960. He brings me the album, wants to go to lunch. We start visiting with each other. And then one day out of the blue, he goes, you like old guitars? I said, oh yeah. He goes, well, there's I know this gal, he said, that lives back in my hometown, Norfolk, Nebraska, that has a whole basement full of this stuff.
It's the hotbed of vintage gear.
Yeah, Norfolk, which is the home of Johnny Carson, by the way. And, he brings in a VHS, cassette tape of her standing there going, this is a Fender Stratocaster, this is a Telecaster. And I'm looking at this going, well, all of that looks like real deal stuff, but I can't tell. Well, let's call her and see if she still has it, because her brother had collected this stuff and he had passed away in 91, and here we are in 99. And so he goes and gets his phone book out of his desk for Norfolk, Nebraska, which is about as thick as a comic book maybe, and calls Sears. Is Jeannie Patrick still working there? Can I speak to her, please? And he's waiting. And Jeannie, do you know who this is? That's right. It's Jim Casey. You know, I'm like, how small a town is this?
Right.
Said, do you still have all the guitars and stuff? He looks at me. Well, listen, I've got a guy that wants to buy it. And so we ended up driving up there 15 hours in a van to pick up all these guitars and everything. So this was, and I bought it still not knowing what year any of this stuff was. And I brought this back and had Joe Glazer refret it with the wire I like. And when he was doing so, I said, what year is it? They pulled the pick guard, and inside one of the pickup routings, it says November of 59. So it's not just the year.
The year is the month, right? It could have been the day.
And this is also a hardtail version. So feel how light this guitar is.
Oh my, yes.
Yeah. And just, I mean, that thing spanks.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say, like, this is how every Strat should sound and feel. And
it should. If
them
they
like
all
that.
felt like this, I would have way more of them. But I've got this and a Jeff Beck Stratocaster are the two Fender Strats that I have.
Speaking of good people, how about we're going to go to the last and then we'll come back to the front.
This?
So that one, yeah.
Yeah. When we were doing the Chris Gaines album in 1999, this is another God story. I had a friend of mine call me and say, have you ever been in Mars Music? And I said, I've seen it driving by. He said, well, there's a guy there who manages the place whose son-in-law just died in a car wreck. Would you go by there and just talk to him and just offer, any kind of
words,
shoulder, lean on. And so I stopped by and met the guy, gave him my phone number. But before I left, I said, I didn't know you guys had any vintage guitars here. This was sitting in a glass showcase by itself, just sitting out in the store.
Like the Wayne's World Stratocaster.
Yeah. And I said, what's the story on that? He said, well, the guy that really knows about this is a guy named Brent. And he's not here right now, so you can call. He'll be in later. So anyway, I left him my phone number. You need it, if you ever want to call me. And so I get down to the studio where we're working out at Wayne's studio with Garth and pick up the phone on a break and call Mars Music. And Brent finally comes to the phone. I said, that guitar, tell me about it. And he told me, I said, well, can you put my name on it? I'm coming into town 2 days later. I'll be down Thursday. I can stop by and pick it up, put my name on that guitar. So I go 2 days later to Mars Music, walk in, meet Brent for the first time, shake his hand, and I saw that the showcase was empty. Where's the guitar? And he said, that. He said, yeah, well, the guy that stopped by, he said, we took the guitar out and there was something wrong with the bridge pickup, he said. And so a guy stopped by and picked it up. He's going to repair it and then we'll call you. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm glad the whole time I'm not going, you could have called or whatever.
Right.
Like, okay.
It's the Southern gentleman.
Yeah, so I drive out to Wayne's studio and I walk in and I'm the first one there other than Deanne, who's sitting there at her desk answering the phones and doing the business. And as soon as I walk in, she goes, don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. I said, what? And she said, Brent from Mars Music called and said, the guy who was going to repair the guitar for you is going to buy it instead of you. I said, what? I said, you know what? He needs to tell me that. So I went back into the control room and picked up the phone and called. Yeah, Brent, what's happening down there? And he goes, yeah, man, I'm sorry. And he said, repeated all that about the guy who came in to pick it up. He's going to buy it. And I'm like, how do you go from having my name on it to the guy who's repairing it for me now is going to buy it instead of me? He said, yeah, I know. I'm gonna look and try to find you another one. And I'm like, you're not going to find one of those. I don't know anything about Gretsch at that point or how rare or whatever. But anyway, he finally says something that made me go, oh, okay, I get it. He said, it was his guitar to begin with. Oh, I said, he wants his guitar back. You should have just told me that. So I hang up the phone, go into the kitchen. I made a bowl of cereal. I'm thinking I'm kill some time before everybody arrives.
Waiting to reclaim your cherub-like demeanor.
Yeah. And I actually said something to, as I'm walking with the cereal, I said, hey, you know what's going on? I don't know. I'll trust you. So like 5 minutes later, Wayne opens the door and says, hey, Garth wants to have a production meeting up front. Like, why not in here? And okay, so I walked through the house, and
What kind of cereal was it, by the way?
it was just some kind of cereal.
Okay.
I don't know. Don't remember. I'm thinking Honey Nut Cheerios or
Something
but-
healthy-ish.
yeah. But so I walk up front, and as I'm walking toward the room, I see Garth sitting in a chair, Wayne sitting in a chair, and Chris McHugh sitting in a chair. I'm like, we're having a meeting up front. And as I walk into the room, inevitably my eyes, I'm
Sure.
drawn to this. There's this guitar with the case lid open. And I'm looking at it. And before I can even process what's going on, Garth said, "You got to do me a favor." He said, "Before you touch this guitar," he said, "you got to call Brent from Mars Music. It's killing him what I made him do to you." He went and raced ahead and got this guitar for me and gave it to me. Now, I don't know if you want to hear the next part, but because
Well, he really ratcheted you up and tried to egg you on to make the call
wanted me
very.
he wanted me to call Brent from Mars and
Yeah.
and do my share of the practical joke, which was to threaten everybody in the store that I was going to come down there and whip their tails. And as I said, I'm going to start with who's the manager there. I'm going to whip his tail, and then I'm going to work my way around whipping everybody's tail till I get to you. Then I'm going to whip your tail. And it was about 10 seconds of silence, and he goes, "Is Garth there?" And I fell out laughing. But yeah, so this was
beautiful.
something Garth gave me. And of course, when I took it out of the case, it would not play above like the 7th fret here. It just was strings that were laying on the neck. But I would manage to play these. And so that song that's on the record, maybe it's the movies, maybe it's the books, maybe it's the government and all the other crooks. Come on, people now, smile on you. I've tracked it with this guitar right out
in
of
its
the
current
case.
condition.
Yeah, and
or
I
not
thought-
current, but then
Yeah, just whatever song you're about to play us that we're going to do next, I hope it doesn't require anything up here, whereas Jerry Reed would call it the dust is.
right.
So, but
The
I
money's up
managed-
there.
Yeah, yeah. Roger Miller said that these were the money. was.
So what year is that?
60,
Okay.
60. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love the story, and it's just one more moment and stories you've told about Garth that just show like
Oh,
what a great guy is, what a fun-loving guy he is, and
And you have to be careful
intense
about,
as
yeah,
well.
Well, you have to be careful about liking something around him and letting him know that you like
Right.
something because it'll show up at your house. So I've learned. Don't go, "Oh man, I've always wanted." I mean, that's where this 1176 came
Okay.
from. Was he gave me that too when we were doing that Chris Gaines album because I mentioned one day to the engineer, "What have you got on my signal chain?" 1176, dude. I said I should know because every time I bother to ask, that's what it is. I guess I'm gonna have to break down and get one. And again, he's in the back of the room, and like a week or two later, one arrives at the house, and so I'm like,
Well, then excuse me, I fully expect next time I come here
Yeah.
to have to navigate my Prius around a Lambo or something on the driveway. Like, how come?
Yeah, yeah.
I told Garth I really like Lamborghinis,
"Oh,
and
man,
here we
yeah.
are.
Yeah, no, you just have to be careful around him because he's super generous that
Yeah.
way. But it also bothers me that it's like, don't be afraid he's going to say yes. Be afraid he's going to say yes because it just adds more to that column of things Garth has done nice for me, and I can't pay
Right.
it back.
Yeah, just keep writing him songs.
So, well, I do my best.
So one more in the rack. Not your first guitar, but probably your first real guitar, maybe?
Well, my first guitar was a Telecaster my dad gave me
Okay.
for Christmas when I was 15. And so this happened to be one of the guitars in the Nebraska
Okay.
trip. It's a 61. And once I got this would be on, I would take this to every session. This and my dad's 335 would just be, if I had those two guitars, I could get it all
any
done.
genre, anything.
Yeah. So this thing is phenomenal. It also happens to be the only guitar that I've ever taken to Joe Glazer. The only one out of all these guitars where he told me later, if you ever want to get rid of that guitar, you let me know. Something's really special about this guitar. It just has a great acoustic quality, and these pickups sound phenomenal. And a Telecaster just feels so much home to me because it was my first guitar that I just feel like that's what I want to feel when I pick up a guitar. So this is a favorite as well.
So I just want to talk about Jerry Reed just for a second, because one thing you had in your possession for a little while was also a birth year instrument from Jerry. It was a bass. Is that right?
Yeah, Jimmy Lee
but you-
Sloas has it now.
But maybe just talk just a little bit about Jerry. Again, he grew up in a household where Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed were
Yeah, I mean,
friends,
yeah,
acquaintances,
the
associates.
guys that were always in the Mercury office when they opened it in Nashville, when I would go down there as, little kid, were Jerry Reed, Ray Stevens, my dad. Were always floating around, bringing people in and out, doing sessions with them. And, Jerry would figure out at some point that he wasn't a session player. He was an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray would figure out the same thing, although he was a great session player. He also played trumpet, and he's a multi-instrumentalist. But I mean, just the talent, of those guys that had moved to Nashville sort of around the same time. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I ever went over to Jerry Reed's house, it was a mobile home that he lived in. And so, but we grew up, going to the state fair together, and so the first time I was ever in a band, his daughter, Sedina, was the singer. And we would rehearse at Jerry's house. And the time he came in when we were rehearsing scared me to death because I had an electric guitar for a month. Mm. And 2 months after that, we played our first gig. After getting my Telecaster for Christmas, February, 2 months later, we're playing our first time on stage. And he would come into rehearsal to watch us and freak me out, And then when we went to go do our sound check for that first gig, he came to sound check. And I'm like, ah. And he walked up on stage while we were sound checking and just took the volume knob on my amp and cranked it. And said,
very valuable life lesson.
Yeah.
From Jerry Reed himself.
Well, and he said, son, this is what they come to hear. And I'm like, no, they didn't come to hear me doing it, But that's, when I look back on all that stuff, I'm like, golly, I can't believe that it didn't intimidate me to the point of stopping at some point, but I'm glad I didn't stop too, At some point because I look at my dad's, his discography and the people he played for. I mean, Elvis, Orbison, one of the Beatles and all these people. And I'm thinking, I just want to, for the longest time when I was growing up, I just want to do what Dad did. And then at some point where it was kind of my turn to step up and do something, I'm like, wait, kind of intimidating. Do I really want to step into this and try to do this? And that shadow that my dad casts. But then I look at it all these years later and I'm going, Frampton, Skaggs, Garth, all the people I've written for, Bonnie Raitt, Clapton, all this stuff. I'm like, I kind of got, blessed the same, to be able to work with the same,
right.
It's its own,
right.
List of the who's who of, what we grew up on and love, so worked out okay.
Yeah, I think you landed on your feet. You did just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, gear is what our show is all about. Just one real quick question. You said I wasn't familiar with Gretsch, but you are now. And actually one of your pre-owned Gretches is now in our collective sphere.
Yeah.
We got the gold Sparkle Jet.
Oh,
I believe that you, Brody has the gold one and a silver one, and Jason saw the gold one. He's always been interested in that and did a little arm twisting. And when I came down last time, I had a car, or before Christmas, had a car. It went back to Pennsylvania. His wife surprised him with it on Christmas Day in front of his granddaughters. And so those guitars, you play all kinds of guitars when you're on tour with Garth, but you played some Gretches at Caesars on that residency.
Yeah. And the thing about the Gretsch guitar today is they're made better than those were. They're far, superior as far as the quality, the craftsmanship and everything. There's still something really sonically, appealing about going back to the old guitars. There's a sound.
Right.
So it's like, and Joe Glazer, when he looked at that guitar, when I took it to him, his first comment was, they're the coolest, worst made guitars on the planet. And then he said, and you're lucky, all of your frets are in the right place.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
It's an intonation problem, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So frets in the wrong place?
Yeah, that's hard to fix.
Okay, but that evidently is the thing. And then I'll cap it with this. My dad said for years, every time he'd go work with Chet would try to give him Gretsch guitars because, Chet used them.
Right.
And then Dad would say that again, years would roll by. Yeah, Chet was always trying to give me a Gretsch. And one day I finally said, why didn't you take the Gretsch? He said, because they were horrible. So I was just like, okay.
Unreliable.
He did, but he was also playing, his 335. So
it covers some of that.
But to switch from that to, and maybe every time Dad touched a Gretsch, it was one of those that Joe was talking about that might have been suspect for some reason.
Right.
So it just didn't sell itself to my dad, so he never wanted one. But that's a phenomenal guitar, and that's wound up on a bunch of cool tracks. In fact, I tracked with it one time on a song we did in the studio with Barry Gibb. Ricky Skaggs and I produced this album, and I sent a picture of it to Garth, said, hey, it's on this today, just let him know that it's so much appreciated. Even all these years that have rolled by, it still gets used and it sounds great.